Welcome to the Adventurous Minds podcast, examining fitness and wellness through the lens of outdoor sport and adventure.
Welcome back to another episode of Adventurous Minds. It's your host, Timmy Summers. You may know our next guest, Lorraine Huber, from her days competing on the Freeride World Tour. After being crowned champion in 2017, Lorraine shifted her attention to a new challenge, coaching the next generation of athletes and leaders. Lorraine is an expert on mental strength and has made a second career out of helping others overcome their fears, perform under pressure, and achieve their goals, all while continuing to push her own career in professional skiing. I'm excited to share my conversation today with Lorraine about how you can change your mind to improve your performance and tap into your inner mental strength. Lorraine has a wealth of knowledge, and she is a pleasure to talk and listen to, and this conversation is packed full of advice and tips to get you out of your head and doing what you love.
All right, let's get started. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here.
A lot I want to dive into here, from kind of all the way from your early skiing career and all the way to present day, kind of being a mental strength coach. But for now, can we go back to the beginning when you were just a kid in Austria? What was it like growing up there?
So I was really fortunate to grow up in Lech Arlberg, which is a small mountain village that happens to be part of the largest ski area in Austria, though. And my dad's family has been living here for literally 400 years, which is insane. And yeah, we grew up just 100 meters away from the closest lift. And skiing was a big part of what our family did in winter. My dad's a ski instructor. He was instructing for 40 years. And my mum also learned to ski really proficiently, actually. And so we were allowed to go to ski school instead of kindergarten in early years. And living in a place like Lech is very much about winter tourism. In the winter, really everyone works in tourism. So it really all revolves around that. And I think another thing about living here is that people are just really connected to nature and to the four seasons throughout the year. I mean, we literally live right in the mountains. So I think that's the best thing about living in Lech is the closeness and the connection to nature.
Yeah, God, I can't even imagine 400 years. That's an incredibly long time to be in one place. That's amazing to even know that. No way. And Austria is like one of the first places that skiing kind of came about, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the modern ski technique was founded here at the Arlberg by Hannes Schneider. He's an absolute legend who actually immigrated to the US because he was escaping from the Nazis.
Oh, wow.
Which is, really interesting. He lived in North Conway. That's where he ended up living for the rest of his life. Set up a ski school and a ski area there. So that's really interesting. So he developed a progression of exercises because to learn how to ski, because he understood that it would be beneficial if ski instructors taught in a similar way. And he was most famous for inventing the stem Christie turn, which is, when you do like a snow plow, but then you bring your other ski parallel. That's what he invented. And he was an amazing free rider as well. So he was jumping big cliffs with the gear from back those days, which was obviously very rudimentary compared to what we have. Someone I've always really looked up to, Hannes Schneider. So skiing plays a massive part in Austria also, for the economy, and tourism is a really big sector here. And like I said, for us in Lech, if we didn't have ski tourism, there'll just be a couple of farmers here and that would be it. So that's how we live. So it's very important for our lives.
Yeah. So, you're also half Australian, right? And I can definitely hear it. And so you moved there when you were 8 years old. Was it tough leaving the mountains, or were you still kind of young enough where you weren't so attached to them?
I remember really looking forward to moving to Australia. We knew Australia because my mum's from Australia, so that's a connection there. And already, I think at 3 years, I flew to Australia and spent time there with my family, so I was familiar with it. And I don't remember it being tough to leave the mountains, actually. But I think it was harder for my sister because, as you say, she was a couple of years older than me. But I remember being really excited about the move, actually.
Were you able to ski it all down there, or where in Australia were you?
So we were in Torquay, which is 1.5 hours southwest of Melbourne. It's the beginning of the Great Ocean Road. So we went from living in the mountains to living directly on the beach. So I don't know how I got so lucky with that. I really appreciate that and cherish that fact.
That's pretty cool.
I know. But no, we didn't ski very much in Australia at all. It was just really expensive. My family couldn't really afford it, but I mean, I was able to, in our summer holiday, I was able to go to Lech every year to visit my dad. And that's where I was able to, get my skiing in and still speak German and have that connection to Lech as well. So that was important.
That's pretty cool because, I mean, so many of professional skiers, and I mean, if you're in the professional realm, it feels like everyone grew up racing or they grew up like, in Lech but forever. It's that sort of story that you hear about often. It's rare that people that don't live next to a mountain kind of go the professional route.
Yeah, it really does differentiate me from most of the riders on tour. If they weren't from racing, then they were from a mogul skiing background or from like half pipe and used to do like X Games and all that kind of stuff, World Cup, Europe Cup. So I didn't come back to Austria until I was 18. So there was, 10 years there where I wasn't really, I was skiing for those 5 weeks, but I'd never received any formal training. So what I was able to do is ski in the upper ski school groups. So here in Lech, like ski schools have a really high level. So the upper groups teach you how to ski off-piste. They don't necessarily teach you the technique, but they just go off-piste skiing. It's guiding. It's classic ski guiding. So that's what I was able to do. And, I couldn't carve a turn on the groom. I really didn't know how, but I was able to ski those salt and pepper turns in like any kind of conditions, in crusty snow, whatever it was. I was able to, to ski quite efficiently, I guess. But I didn't really start free riding until I started hanging out with my snowboard instructor friends and going riding with them. And they were the ones who were approaching the mountain in a much more creative way and like, riding long turns, jumping over cliffs, playing with the terrain instead of just skiing in the fall line and keeping that rhythmic turn, which is all I knew. So I learned from the snowboarders.
That's funny. I feel like you rarely hear that story of a skier looking to snowboards.
Did you ever contemplate?
Did you ever contemplate getting on a snowboard yourself, or is it kind of too far gone down the ski route?
No, I did learn how to snowboard. I actually even progressed, not so badly. I did my level 2 and 3 snowboarding certification. I was the first woman in Austria to have both my level 3 certifications, like instructor certification in skiing and snowboarding. But it was never like, I was always at heart a skier. That's what I always really loved. But I appreciated the new challenge of snowboarding. But in fact, I haven't snowboarded like for probably 15 years. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'm trying to, because I grew up skiing my whole life. I'm great at it, and it's hard to like, when there's a big powder day, it's hard to go and decide like, okay, I'm gonna try something else out. But I really want to learn and try something new because it looks so fun.
Yeah,
it's really on my bucket
list.
Like you
say, especially in deep powder. I think if you're like riding with someone who's not at your level one day, then you can get a snowboard and challenge yourself that way.
Yeah, I need to do that. Maybe the end of this season when the snow kind of dies down, that's what I'll do.
And softens.
Yeah, exactly. So you moved back to Austria when you were 18, and you're hanging out with the snowboarders. You were an instructor then, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
At what point did you kind of decide like, okay, I'm going to get into the competitive world? That's such a crazy different aspect of the sport.
So I was ski instructing throughout my studies, which meant like 6 or 7 weeks I was able to ski instruct. And before and after ski instructing, we would, sneak off and do some runs beforehand, or afterwards we would be able to ski for an hour or an hour and a half, and we would have a lift ticket, which was awesome. And it was my ski instructor friends. They said, "Hey, Lorraine, you should like enter this competition. You would be really good. It's a free ride comp. It's in Slovenia. It's called the Snow Thrill of Kanin in Slovenia. You should go." So it was them that really encouraged me. I don't think I even thought that that would be something for me, but with their encouragement, I was like, oh, I might go check this out. And so that's how it started. Yeah.
Wow.
And was that a jarring experience, having not really competed in the sport before? Was it terrifying getting up there?
You know what? We were only 3 girls at the start. I'm talking in 2004, this was when so this is pre-Freeride World Tour days. There were no qualifiers, no junior events. There was the IFSA, the Free Skiing World Tour, but they only had one stop in Europe. I believe it was in Tignes in France, but maybe also in Verbier, actually. So we just had some sporadic contests, nothing like the system that you have today, where you also really have this perspective of, oh, awesome, I'll start with the junior events and then I can work my way up and go to the qualifiers, 1-star to 4-star, big dream of maybe one day doing the tour. There was nothing like that. So I just remember it was just the 3 of us girls. I couldn't jump yet, really. So I just remember I skied a line, just, I guess, a bit faster than the others. But I mean, yeah, I do remember being pretty excited, but yeah, so grassroots, so at the beginning of everything, which is kind of cool to have been able to see the whole development of free riding as a professional sport happen.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, you really kind of got into it in the early 2000s, right? And you went through for 15-ish years. I mean, you really would have seen the progression of the sport, but particularly with free ride, because that's a whole different discipline.
Yeah, 20 years actually.
20 years, sorry.
20 years, yeah, totally. So the whole progression, and also to have a really pivotal role in that, especially on the female side of things, to really be able to push the level and be part of that. It's just, yeah, it's awesome. And it's a big honor as well.
Yeah. What was it like, experiencing kind of the sport gradually get bigger? Was there anything notable about that?
Well, the notable things were for sure. So apart from gear, which is an obvious one, my first freeride ski was 76 millimeters underfoot, which is crazy to think about. I don't even have groomer skis that narrow anymore. But I think the biggest shift that I lived through, or that really impacted me, was what it means to be a professional skier. So, when I started out, it was more about magazine covers and having parts in movies, a little bit the competitions, and it turned more and more into being able to create your own media and being your own basically small media production company. Mm-hmm. Now it's all about social media. It's hugely important to most sponsors, and magazine covers have become completely obsolete, that kind of thing. Like, we used to go out shooting just on good condition kind of days, would be like, hey, let's see what we're going to try and get. And then we used to send those photos to like publications, and like no one does that anymore because there's absolutely no money whatsoever. So the way you sell skiing perhaps, or present skiing, has definitely changed. And I think that athletes are in, like, it's definitely gotten a lot tougher. Like, there's less and less budget every year. I think athletes are in direct competition with influencers. Yep. So I think I know that a lot of companies are filtering their marketing budget more towards influencers than they did previously. And so it really changes the focus, because an influencer is, say, a world champ at the app and at photos and images. They're really good at that, but they're not focusing on a sport as an athlete is. So I think it's a matter of also finding the right partners who value athletes who are really pushing the sport aspect of their work, and not just who are good at working on an app.
Yeah, that makes sense. And looking at it from the kind of what you're saying about the publicity side and how the sport got bigger and more eyes, and you need to have a social media presence and all of that. Did that ever affect your actual performance while skiing, or is that something that you were conscious of during your competitive career, maybe towards the end?
What I really noticed is the jump from the qualifier level events to the World Tour. Like, in terms of the media busyness and the media attention that you got, that was a huge shift. On the qualifiers, it kind of felt more like it's us mates skiing together and very grassrootsy kind of feel. And as soon as he got on the World Tour, it was like, okay, wow, like there's heaps of journalists, there's a lot of attention. Like, you're filmed with a Cineflex camera. That definitely changes things, or can be a distraction. Let's just say it can be a really big distraction. Yeah. And I definitely felt that. I really struggled with the pressure for many years when I first was on the tour. I really had to learn over a long period of time how to deal with the extreme pressure of competition. And I was always so hard on myself, and I didn't have the confidence. I struggled. I really did struggle. And it was a long process of learning how to basically focus my attention on the things that really, really matter. And I learned a lot about flow psychology and being in the moment, being in my body, as opposed to thinking too much about results and how the judges might see me, and what happens if, like, I screw this up and I really need to podium, otherwise I can't qualify. That's all noise and distraction. And it takes a lot of discipline and practice to learn to focus your attention on the things that really matter in the moment when you want to perform.
Yeah, I was just recently, watching some of the Olympics and was listening to some of the commentary of these athletes and, the people who fall or they make it or whatever it is. And everyone has something to say. And I was like, I could not imagine being an athlete right now, listening to this like critique of myself. I mean, it would really get to you. And when you were kind of feeling all this pressure, were there books or people that you reached out to, or did you kind of, go through this yourself and learn how to cope with it?
No, I definitely, so that was also progression in itself. At first, I didn't know that you could learn these skills to be mentally stronger and to deal with that pressure. I actually thought, maybe I'm just not that real competitive type. Maybe I don't have that killer instinct. Maybe I just don't care enough about being better than others. I really, that was a story I was telling myself and was buying into. And then I realized that, no, I don't know, like maybe this is something that you can learn. How do people get so strong? Are you born with it? Maybe it's something you can learn. So luckily I had a bit of a growth mindset in that regard and started hunting for information, and books were my first source of information. I read books. I reached out to people who were ahead of me on the journey, asked how they managed things, and I ended up getting coaches as well. I did invest quite a lot of my money in coaching as well. So it was a long process that took years, and I mean, it's a never-ending process. I'm still learning so much about it, and it always fascinated me, which is why I decided in 2015 to go to university. So back to university, because I'd already finished my business degree. I never thought I would do another one. But as a mature age student, I studied mental strength coaching and how to work with other people, supporting other people in developing their mental skills.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You talked about how I feel like so many people, I mean, everyone struggles with confidence in some way or another at some point in their life. And I think it's lost on everyone that it's something that can be trained and you can learn, and it's a habit. It's really cool that you went back to school to learn about it. Was that were you still competing, or did you compete after you went back to school, or is that more recent?
So that was 15, and I became world champion in 17. So I was it was really at the peak, I would say. The reason I also went to school is because I understood that once I'm not competing anymore and not skiing professionally anymore, that I would need to fill that hole with something that I'm equally passionate about. I had that bar raised for myself. I was like, I don't want to just, because being a skier is like my dream job, and often it doesn't necessarily feel like you're going to work. There are aspects of it that aren't always fun, but it's like, this is what I want to do. And I'm in a very privileged position that I get to like develop myself as a skier, as a guide, as a coach for my work. And so I was like, I don't want to I want to keep that bar high. I don't want to go down eventually once I'm not able to, perform as a professional skier anymore. I don't want to just do any kind of job. And I had a marketing degree, but I just felt inside that being, for example, a marketing manager in the outdoor sports industry, which I absolutely could have done because I understand the market, I understand the needs, I know people, I could have definitely gotten into that field of work, but I just didn't feel passionate about it. I didn't feel that drawn to it. And that's something I've done all my life, is I've followed what I'm really passionate about and drawn to. That's what I've done. I had the courage to do that. It takes some courage. I didn't always know how I was going to do stuff. I had no idea how I was going to build up a career as a professional skier. It didn't even exist when I started, but I did feel this like burning desire inside me to give it like the best go I could possibly give it. And I always felt inside that I had a lot to give there, and I could really develop a lot in that area. So that's my message to people. You don't have to know exactly how, like you don't have to know all the little steps. Like you can't plan that stuff. You can't plan who you're going to bump into and who you might develop relationships with, and you just can't. But knowing what you're really passionate about and like really like excited to get your teeth stuck into, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about how unconventional it is to be in the midst of your like professional ski career and then go back to school. A lot of people would probably look at that and be like, that's probably not a great move. But clearly that academic, like the passion that you had in the academics, that actually kind of improved and informed your career, and you went on to win. It's pretty cool to think that you can kind of take an academic approach that actually improved, because it helped with all your mental head noise and whatever it was, to eventually help your career. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty cool sentiment to be able to share. Is like, as long as you're following what excites you, you're going to get to a good place, a better place, whatever it is.
Yeah. Even if you don't achieve, the end goal or the outcome goal you might have defined for yourself, and that for me was being world champion. Like I didn't have that goal from the beginning because I didn't even believe I could get that far. It took me a while to work up to that goal. But it was the broader overall vision, and that did, drive me a lot. But the most key thing about that is, this is something I thought about a lot. Like goal setting is obviously a huge part of what it means to be mentally strong as well. And everyone knows about, it's good to have this outcome goal, like a really like impossible, scary goal. But then if you think about that all the time, you're getting distracted. What you need to be able to do is focus on the process when you're like in the season, when you're training, like the day-to-day routines and habits that you need to just get that a little bit better. That's important. So it's good to have this overall goal, but then you really need to kind of forget about that and just focus on like the day-to-day decisions and process that you're making. That's really key.
100%. And are there any kind of techniques or strategies that you use that kind of helped you improve your competitive mindset or get you through being nervous and feeling under pressure?
Yeah. There's a lot, but it started my work. It's like deep inner work that you have to do, because it's not just like little surface kind of tricks or anything like that. Like, I actually had to reprogram my brain pretty much from focusing on results and outcome goals and telling myself that I'm at this event to podium. That's the reason I'm here. And if I don't do that, basically, what's the point of being here? That's how I used to think. I had to reprogram myself to focus on mastery, which means you are there to learn and grow. You're there to challenge yourself and to step up to the challenge and to develop your skills, whether that's physical, mental, and also to have an enjoyable and pretty awesome experience. And, competing on the Freeride World Tour is so privileged. Like, there are literally, I think, 80 or 100 people working really hard to make this event even possible. Like, from the safety team that secures everything, to the like organizers who are securing sponsorship money. Like, you get to stand up there on the start and like create this insane challenge for yourself that you can't do that on your own. You can't simulate that. Like, filming is similar, but it's not quite the same, because on the Freeride World Tour, you have that one shot at your run. You're flying to Alaska, perhaps, and then you get the one shot. So that does create a lot of pressure, and the challenge is awesome. And so I had to, instead of feeling like scared to make mistakes, because I used to stress about that, like, oh, what if I crash again? And what if I lose my line again and get lost in the face? To really being like, hey, you know what? I'm here to challenge myself. Whatever I do, whether I crash or whatever happens, I'm definitely challenging myself. So I've already achieved my goal, my ultimate why to being there. So basically what I've done is I've lowered the expectations. I've lowered the bar in terms of what I need to achieve to make it worthwhile. And that takes the pressure off. Now you're free to push and to like ski freely, like you can. And before, I was always skiing with a handbrake on, like I skied super slow and cautiously, and you could see it. The judges could see it. My friends are like, Lorraine, what are you doing? Like, you don't seem yourself. You're like much too much in your head. And just learning about all that was just so fascinating to me, and is something that you can use for other areas of your life. Maybe you have like a super scary meeting coming up where you feel like you have to perform super well, and it's really important that you're able to get certain things across, or you have an important negotiation with your boss, or there's all sorts of situations where it's important to remind yourself, look, I'm here to learn and grow. That's my ultimate goal, and whatever I do, that's I'm doing enough, and this is going to be fine, and let's go. Like, I'm here to challenge myself.
I feel like this is kind of a perfect segment to segue into talking about flow, because it's kind of like the balance of challenge and confidence. Can you talk a little bit like about some of the ways, like what it is and how kind of like the best way to achieve it and kind of what it can do for you?
Mm-hmm. So flow is, I'm sure most people have heard of this feeling of being in flow and really being completely absorbed in a moment. You lose track of time. You might, like, some people might know the feeling of working on your computer and you're so like involved in this pretty challenging task that you're doing, you forget to like eat, you forget to drink. Like, you basically are so absorbed in the activity that you don't think about, oh, what do other people think of me right now? What do I appear like to them? So they say it's this a loss of self-consciousness as well that comes hand in hand with flow. And basically, all those things boil down to it being an optimal experience. So Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is the founder of Flow, and he researched this for literally over 30 years, he was really interested in learning when are we happiest as people. And he discovered that when we're involved in activities where we're stretching our skills, our abilities, not too much, not so much that we're stressed and anxious, but not just sitting there watching TV where we're bored and apathetic, but we have the right balance between challenging ourselves. So between the challenge level and our skill level, good balance, that we're actually experiencing the best moments of our lives, the optimal experience. And that when we come out of that, we're like, wow, like I want to experience that again. That was amazingly fun. And so it became my goal, instead of podiuming or getting a certain result, which I can't control, because I can't control, first of all, how the judges see me and my skiing. It's quite subjective. And I can't control how my competitors are skiing. You know, it's all out of my control. But what I can control is how I'm skiing and how I'm focusing on specific things related to my skiing. And so I was like, you know what? My goal is going to be to try and just enter flow when I'm at my freeride comp runs. That's what I want to try and do. And so it gave me, like, I still had the goal of world champion. Don't get me wrong. I think that's important, especially if you're a professional athlete, because we get measured on results. But what I really placed my focus on was learning to be in flow. And I knew that if I am in flow during my runs, I'm going to be skiing at my best. So that's the other element that comes into it. When we're in flow, we can perform at really high levels. So you have 100% of your attention, of your bandwidth available to you. You're not distracting yourself with other thoughts that are irrelevant to what you're actually doing in that moment. So you, like, you know, all cylinders are firing. You're able to react much more intuitively to whatever you have to deal with in that moment, instead of like being blocked and overthinking, for example. So you can just you can ski from a really intuitive place and react in the right way. And it's your body that's doing all that. Your mind is the best, is if your mind is actually quiet and calm. That's when I had my best flow experiences. And my body is the athletic professional. Like, my body knows exactly what to do. If my mind starts thinking too much, all I do is, you know, kind of distract myself and interrupt the automatic scripts that I have practiced over so many years. So yeah, does that answer your question to what flow is?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I it's such an intoxicating feeling. You know, you kind of, it's this thing that kind of comes over you. You know, sometimes you feel it in the moment, but sometimes you kind of like wake up out of it. And it makes sense that, you want the higher goal of winning the world tour, but in that moment on that ride, you want to focus on yourself and kind of forget about that and just do your thing.
And even beforehand, like everything leading up to the competition, you have to be ruthless about not allowing yourself to think about results. Ruthless. It's really important to manage your energy that way.
How do you, I've always called it head noise, kind of when, your thoughts are just racing. How, do you have any techniques, or like how do you kind of quiet your mind down when you just can't seem to get rid of all those thoughts?
So, that at freeride comps, we have to hike up to the start a lot, right? So sometimes even 1.5 hours of boot packing or hiking to the start. So plenty of time for this head noise that you're talking about. And one technique that I used is mantras. I think you would say mantra. So I used to basically brainwash myself by repeating the text, I am a strong skier, with every step. I am a strong skier. And that would block out other thoughts that I didn't want to have. Like, if I allowed my anxiety to take over, if I listened to my anxiety, and the tension that you inevitably feel before a competition. It would be more like, oh, I really hope I scoped that line right. And man, did I get the landing zone right? And have I got the angle right? And what if there are like big holes from other people landing in my landing, and blah, 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 blah. So to answer your question, so that's one technique you can use, but really what you need is self-awareness. You have to be an observer of your own thoughts and of your own feelings. And that's something that takes a lot of discipline and training as well. But it all starts with self-awareness. So the first thing you have to do is realize that you're actually just in this negative cycle of thoughts, because the crazy thing is that sometimes we don't realize what inner texts we have running in our head. But usually when we do some kind of action on the outside, on the inside, we always have words going on in our head, because our mind thinks in words. Our mind expresses itself in words and images. And so the first step is to really create some distance to those thoughts, between who you are and the thoughts, and to understand that these thoughts that are coming up are a product of my brain. My brain is designed to think a lot. It's like it farts out thoughts all the time. That's just how a brain is designed to be. And it's still up to me to decide if I attach to those thoughts. Like, do I listen to this stuff that's coming up? Sometimes it's crap. You know, sometimes it's like, oh, you're so not ready for this comp, and you were skiing really badly yesterday, and your legs feel super weak, and you're not going to be able to land that drop. Like, it's not even true. And so it's up to you to still be in control. That's what they mean by controlling thoughts as well. It's not that we can stop having thoughts. We can't really do that. But we can decide on which thoughts we're going to listen to, and allow our attention to focus on, and which ones are just super unhelpful, where you're just like, okay, stop. That's called the stop technique. That's another technique that you can use as well. And then you can stop thoughts and then consciously decide to focus on something that will be empowering to how you want to behave in that situation, as opposed to something that's going to like block you or hinder you from skiing the way you want to ski, or behaving the way you want to behave in that situation.
Yeah. And, a lot of these kind of strategies and techniques are I feel like they're kind of core components of different styles of meditation. And have you ever practiced meditation, any form of it or anything like that?
Yeah, I have. I practice mindfulness meditation, which is pretty much training our concentration, training where we direct our focus. And maybe that is the most powerful thing of all, because our attention dictates our whole subjective experience that we're having from moment to moment. We all have different experiences based on what our attention is taking in terms of information. So mindfulness meditation works through the body to train where you focus your attention. So you might, for example, focus in the feeling of your breath going out of your body. So literally just learning to keep your attention in the present moment, which we can do awesomely well through using our breath as an anchor, because we're breathing always. We're always in the now with our breathing. So if you want to be more in the now, in the present moment, train directing your attention to the feeling of your breath coming into your body and the feeling of your breath going out of your body, and you will automatically have your attention in the present moment.
It's so cool to be able to talk to you about this, because I feel like so much of sports in general is all about the physical side. How hard can you push your body? How hard can you, how fast can you get up a mountain, whatever it is. And to hear about kind of the mental side of it, the introspective side, it's such an underrated part of this whole process. If you're not mentally strong, you can't get further up the mountain. It's it's a core piece of everything. And the kind of the power players in my mind who are winning the games, they're all doing this, but it's just not talked about enough. So it's really cool to hear you talking about it, and particularly spreading the word as well through your coaching.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more about that. That's for sure. There's so much potential there.
There really is. I kind of think we're at the tip of the iceberg right now. You know, I think that we're kind of going into this era of people are becoming more aware of it and realizing it's important. So I'm pretty hopeful that it will be a much bigger part of competition, daily life. I mean, you know, we're talking about from a sport perspective, but obviously this can inform your entire life. And so yeah, I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on your coaching. Are you working directly with, you know, students or people that come to you? You know, what's that experience like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm working with people one-on-one, mainly athletes who want to learn how to overcome their fears and remove things that are blocking them, like really learning how they see their world and the stories that they tell themselves, and shifting that to a degree in order to help them to really be more successful and achieve their next level of success and really fulfill their potential. So there's a lot of work around mindset and mastery as well. And then there's some more strategic and practical things, such as learning how to formulate the right goal, because there's a lot to be said about how to formulate goals. That's a really fascinating area all of itself. We touched upon it a bit before when, you know, there's a distinction between outcome goals and process goals. So also things like that to really understand what it is that I want to focus on. So I'm doing this one-on-one work, but then I'm also doing keynote speaking and workshops with corporate groups. And that's something that I'm really excited to get into more, and to like find out how I can build bridges between what I experienced as a skier and how I was able to, achieve a really high level of performance and use that bridge into the corporate world. Because really performance is, you know, whether that's a big mountain ski line or whether that's giving a really important presentation, it's the same experience in terms of like the symptoms of anxiety that we have, and then the cognitive anxiety we have. It's exactly the same. So I think that there are good bridges to be built there for sure. Sorry, that must have been on my end, Timmy.
No worries.
I just switched to surfing off my phone. It could be because of the fact that everyone's coming home now and they're all on the internet now, probably streaming videos and stuff. And there's just no faster internet in Lake, unfortunately. It's kind of all we've got.
Well, no worries. I mean, I think we're kind of right at the end anyway, so this is kind of a good moment to just kind of wrap it up.
Awesome.
But that was awesome talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, I really appreciate the invite. It was really great chatting to you, and thanks for the great questions. Yeah,
of course. Any final words for the people of Run TV?
Final words. Well, I think it's about having fun and focusing on improving and learning and growing, and not so much about maybe how fast you can complete something in or specific results, but just be in the process, and then you're just going to improve and have fun with it.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks so much, Lorraine.
You're welcome, Timmy. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Adventurous Minds. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to stay up to date with the latest releases, you can scan the QR code or find us on Instagram at Adventurous Minds Pod. See you out there.